Yeah.
Next up, thank you so much, Shannon. Next up, we have Christine McKenzie, who will be talking about ensuring quality data for a connected Canada. Christine is a program consultant with interoperability engagement at CIHI. She is an experienced senior business analyst with over 20 years of experience in project management, stakeholder engagement, and database management. Connecting business and IT teams together, she's led multiple projects to understand and capture business and technical requirements, to create the specifications for health data exchange and database development for standardized health information in several healthcare domains. So we really appreciate Christine being here with us today to share her expertise. Thanks very much, Christine. Over to you.
Okay. Oh, it's saying replace. Okay, maybe I went too fast. Let's see. And should be sharing now. Let's see. So are you seeing my screen?
Yes, we are. That's perfect, Christine. Thank you.
Okay, good. Okay, so most of you are here on this side and my presentation is in front of me. And I think you'll notice a theme throughout my slides as well from what Shannon presented earlier. She did a great job setting me up for this particular part of the presentation. So today I'm going to talk to you about the work that CIHI is doing to ensure quality data for a connected Canada. And I'm going to introduce the Pan-Canadian Health Data Content Framework. Let's see, does it move forward? Okay. So as part of today's outline, I'm going to walk you through a use case to help demonstrate the importance of standardized health data. And I'm going to introduce the Pan-Canadian Health Data Content Framework and then talk about the scope of the data content standard. I'm going to introduce the terminology foundation for the Pan-Canadian value sets, and then talk about the Canadian core data for interoperability, also known as the CIHI, and then provide a close-up of the draft data architecture and talk about the consultation approach. So to start, I'd like you to meet Mo. Mo is visiting Toronto from Vancouver, and he is brought to the emergency department confused and altered. They have no contact information or family members to provide his history, and resuscitation is started and a broad investigation is conducted. So they conduct blood work and some imaging. Due to concerns about sepsis, antibiotics are given. So in our current reality, most information did not follow him from BC to Ontario, and therefore the providers are unable to access his health records from BC. The providers are unaware that he has anaphylactic allergy to ceftriaxone, and he's given ceftriaxone and develops an anaphylactic reaction. So what we're really trying to achieve today is that his records would have followed him from BC to Ontario, and they would have been available for the providers to review when he was in the emergency department. As a result to having access to that health information, they would have known that Mo was allergic to ceftriaxone, and they would have given him an alternative appropriate antibiotic. And because of this information being available to those providers, Mo's outcome would have been better. He would have had a better quality of care, and any adverse reactions to the treatment that he received would have been avoided. So if the information had been captured in a standardized way, Mo's information would have followed him from BC to Ontario. Those providers would have known that he had heart failure. The standards would have ensured that his medication list was up to date and available to the providers. The allergy to ceftriaxone would have been exchanged between the systems, and overall Mo's experiences and outcomes would have been improved. And all of that information that was collected about Mo would be available for researchers and decision support. So I just walked you through a fictional use case, but the reality of today's health system within Canada is that this use case does actually happen. And the end result can be harm to the patient, or even worse, it could end with a person losing their life. So we often talk about Greg Price as that real life use case. And unfortunately for Greg Price, his journey ended with him losing his life. And an inquiry within his death actually found that if his health information would have been available, his death would have been preventable. And I mean like available within a timely manner. So the challenge is that Canada's healthcare data does lack standardization and connectivity. And because the standardized health information is not easily shared across the digital health system, it can lead to fragmented health information about a patient's journey. It creates duplicated tests, leading to wasted resources. It creates unnecessary administrative burden on care providers who want to spend more time connecting with their patients. Often care providers do not have access to health information about their patient at the point of care when they're providing care to their patients. And because of the limited health information, there is limited health system performance measurements within and across sectors available. And all of this can create risk to a patient and providing patient harm, or even in some cases, death, as I mentioned before. So a truly connected healthcare system would mean that your health information would follow you across the continuum of care. And all of these challenges that I have spoken about today would be improved substantially. So how are we addressing this? Over the last couple of years, we've made quite a few strides in improving the healthcare system and connecting the healthcare within Canada. In May of 2022, the Pan-Canadian Health Data Strategy was released, which was a series of reports which set several recommendations on how we can improve the healthcare system. And as part of those recommendations, some included a person-centric common data architecture, as well as interoperable data standards. And then in February of 2023, the Government of Canada released a Working Together to Improve Healthcare for Canadians, which provide funding to the provinces and territories to help move forward and improve on some shared health priorities, which included the modernization of some of the digital health infrastructures to help share health information within and across the provinces and territories. And then in May of 2023, Canada Health Infoway released a shared Pan-Canadian interoperability roadmap, which set 4 strategic goals with some key enablers and building blocks to help improve interoperability within Canada. And then in October of 2023, the Pan-Canadian Health Data Charter was released by the Government of Canada, which put together some requirements. And as part of some of those requirements included common data standards and terminology for interoperability. And then in October of 2023 as well, Interoperability Saves Life was released by the Alberta Virtual Care Coordinating Body, which was a report that emphasized the importance of having a person-centric healthcare system. And you already heard Shannon talk a few minutes ago around Bill C-72. So I won't go into more details about what Shannon has already mentioned here. But what we want to highlight today is our release in September of 2024, which is the Pan-Canadian Health Data Content Framework and CIHI version 1, which was put out for open review during the 60-day period between September and December. And this is where I'm going to be spending most of my time talking to you today. It is also the first building block of the shared Pan-Canadian interoperability roadmap. And it is, as Shannon mentioned, we are partnering with Canada Health Infoway to help improve and advance interoperability within the country. And then in October of 2024, the Alberta Virtual Care Coordinating Body also released another report called Data Disarray, which put forward some recommendations on the need to have strong health data policy as well as governance within our country. So the Pan-Canadian Health Data Content Framework is a vision for one comprehensive data content standard with common data architecture for all health-related data in one place. Its purpose is to improve the quality and consistency of health data captured and shared across our health system. It is meant to be sector agnostic, meaning that the health data is defined the same way, regardless of where it is captured, but while still ensuring to have sector-specific needs to be addressed. It is comprehensive because we are including data and standards that will be used for both primary and secondary use of that health information. And the standard is English and in French. So it's important to think about the products of the Pan-Canadian Health Data Content Framework as one cohesive set of products. At the center of it, we have the data content standard and its subset, the Canadian Core Data for Interoperability, which includes data elements, the value sets and definitions. And then we take the data from that data content standard and we model it within a common data architecture. And as part of the common data architecture, over to the right, you'll notice the information model, conceptual data model, and logical data model. To help with implementation, we also have supporting documentation, such as the business glossary. We provide use cases, metadata, and a meta model. And then we have a business context model to help provide information about the different resources and influences that are helping in the development of the products of the framework. So our core guiding principles for the development of the Pan-Canadian Health Data Content Framework include ensuring that it is person-centric with a multi-user design, that it is inclusive, that it is iteratively developed, that it is collaborative through broad stakeholder participation, that we managed with strong data governance. It is integrated with cohesive data stewardship for robust data quality. It is driven for multiple uses and a reuse of that data, and that it is pan-Canadian and interoperable across our systems. So next, I'm going to talk to you about the scope of the data content standard. So the scope of the Pan-Canadian Health Data Content Framework included, for version 1 that we released back in September, included the TIL blocks that you see here on the screen. And the representation of the TIL blocks is because those concepts are more developed and mature. They've been consulted on. They have data elements, value sets, and data models associated to them. The concepts that you see in the blocks that are gray and with a little bit of an opaque border around them are detailed concepts that we plan to develop over the future. So the development of the products of the Pan-Canadian Health Data Content Framework and the data content standard are using an iterative approach to develop those concepts through consultations and based on stakeholder needs as well. And over time, it will continuously expand to include some of those other blocks. Right now, we are undergoing scoping exercises for version 2 of the Pan-Canadian Health Data Content Framework. And those additional teal boxes that you see on the screen right now are the blocks that we're looking, or the concept that we're looking to have released as part of version 2 in September of 2025 in our open review. And we've already started undergoing consultations on the data standard, the terminology, and the data models for those concepts. So another way to think about the Pan-Canadian Health Data Content Framework and the data standard and its model is that it can be packaged into different types of modules or into reusable sets of data and modules for different types of use cases. So the example that you're looking at on the screen right now would be an example of a module that we might package together for immunization. But there might also be other use cases, such as use cases that are done for data exchange, such as the patient summary, or even examples of data extracts that we may be receiving from our jurisdictions or systems for secondary use of that information. So one thing I really want to emphasize, and I think Shannon did a very good job talking about this during her presentation, is that we are not reinventing the wheel. We are not starting from scratch. We are leveraging data standards, models, frameworks from different jurisdictions across Canada, but as well from our international counterparts to make sure that we are following those best practices as we build out the content of the framework. Some examples, and bear with me because these are just, it's not limited to what I'm showing you on the screen right now, include frameworks such as the quintuple aim, the model for health and well-being, the ISO continuity of care. We also have other standards within the Canadian space, such as the BC Gender, Sex, and Sexual Orientation Standard. And Shannon spoke about this a little bit earlier. We have the Upstream Lab Sparks tool. We have the patient summary Canadian version, as well as the Ontario MD primary healthcare EMR standards. We are also leveraging certain international standards, such as the International Patient Summary and other jurisdictional standards like the United States Core Data for Interoperability, the National Health Service Data Dictionary, as well as the Australian Core Data for Interoperability. And so if you want a full list of referenced standards and models that we are leveraging, you can find them within the business context model. They are in the list of products that are part of the framework. So now I'm going to introduce the terminology foundation for the Pan-Canadian value sets. So as part of version 2 of the Pan-Canadian Health Data Content Framework, we are formalizing a foundation of curated value sets. And what I will also want to mention is that we already included this in part of the CIHI version 1. So what we want to make sure we're doing is that we're using standardized language to ensure that health data is meaningful and usable across systems and settings. We want to make sure that the value sets enable the consistent, accurate, and data collection and exchange while ensuring shared understanding between data senders and receivers. So this is really getting at that semantic interoperability piece that Shannon was talking about. And this is really what we're trying to achieve as part of the work that we're doing with the Pan-Canadian Health Data Content Framework and the data model, as well as this terminology work that we're doing. We want to make sure that we're building based on trusted standards. So we're leveraging standards in existence and terminology from SNOMED CT, ICD-10, LOINC, P-Cloud, and the value sets are available on Canada Health InfoWays terminology server. We are also ensuring that we are globally aligned and also using locally and making sure that we are locally relevant in our approach to make sure that we are aligning with international and Canadian standards. As I mentioned before, we've been looking at the data elements, but we're also looking at the standards used for terminology within the IPS, the US CDI, and the Australian CDI. It is important that the terminology and the value sets are built with flexibility and structure. And we want to make sure that the curated value sets maintain a standardized core while supporting the diverse clinical, operational, and health system needs. So if you recall the 4 modules that Shannon talked about earlier, where CIHI is trying to inform different types of decision-making from the point of care and for secondary use of the information, we want to ensure that this is what we're achieving in the development of the content within the Pan-Canadian Health Data Content Framework, including the value sets. And then, of course, we want to make sure that it's built for clarity and precision. So this is a snapshot from the data content standard, which is also available for download on in our list of products on CIHI's Connected Care webpage. The data, this is an example from the health concern data element. So we have a data element, and then we have the data element definition, as well as some additional guidance to help with implementation. We have the terminology foundation that we're using, the value set, so the link to the actual value set itself, and some examples of what you may find within that value set. So next, I'm going to talk about the Canadian Core Data for Interoperability, and it's also known as the CIHI. The Canadian Core Data for Interoperability is a subset of the Pan-Canadian Health Data Content Framework. So it's defining the standardized set of essential health data elements and value sets within the context of the common data architecture to help support interoperability and data exchange across the Canadian healthcare ecosystem. So you can think about it as really like that subset. It's one, the Pan-Canadian Health Data Content Framework is one data content standard and one common data architecture. And from it, you actually have this subset, which is the Canadian Core Data for Interoperability. So if you look at the screen right now, you'll see the immunization example. Within the larger framework itself, we have 23 data elements, but of those 23 data elements at this time, there's only 2 that are part of the CIHI. These are the 2 data elements that have been identified as being core for interoperability. And similarly to the iterative approach that we're taking for the Pan-Canadian Health Data Content Framework, as we expand on the scope of the content within the framework, so will the Canadian Core Data for Interoperability. So what I did not mention yet, and I feel like I should mention this much earlier within our slide deck, is that we did release version 1 of the CIHI in March of 2025, and this was following the extensive consultation that we've done throughout 2024, including the open review. Within that version of the CIHI, these are the blocks and the data elements that were included as part of that release. And there's a link within the slide deck itself if you want to go and have a look at it. Now, Shannon mentioned this, and I mentioned this earlier too. We are working closely with Canada Health Infoway to help advance interoperability within the country. And so as part of that work, CIHI's Pan-Canadian Health Data Content Framework, the CIHI, and the CA Core, which is the product that is being developed by Infoway, need to be working together in tandem in order to facilitate interoperability and data exchange. So if you think about the Pan-Canadian Health Data Content Framework, what it's defining is the what. So what is that data that is needed and should be collected and shared and standardized across the healthcare system? And then within the Pan-Canadian Health Data Content Framework, you have its subset, which is the CIHI, which is the essential data that is required to help support standardized information capture and enable meaningful data exchange of that information. And the CA Core Plus is the how. So Canada Health Infoway is building the technical exchange specifications on how that data needs to be represented within a set of FHIR profiles and exchange across the healthcare system. And it's really important to note that there are other standards in flight within our provinces and territories. So all of that work that's happening, that good work that's already taken place within our Canadian healthcare landscape has to be taken into consideration. So all of this is part of the feedback loop in how we're iterating and developing and aligning on our data standards. So I really like this slide because it speaks to some of the work and consultations that we've done with our international partners. So interoperability is a global team sport. We are not the only country that are trying to achieve this. Many countries are. We've been talking on a quarterly basis and sometimes even more frequently with our colleagues within the US and Australia about the approach that they've used to develop the US CDI and AU CDI. So some of the lessons that we've learned from our colleagues are the ones that you see here on the screen. And so including, taking an iterative development approach. You don't want to be boiling the ocean, involving the community within a co-design approach, being very open and transparent, looking at use cases, receiving advice on the terminology from our experts. So all of these things are things that we're learning from our colleagues and that we're incorporating in our approach to help develop and build out the content of the framework. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a couple of slides later. So next, I'm going to do a close-up of the draft data architecture, and it will be kept at a high level, but it's just to give you a good view into the work that goes into modeling the data that we're talking about today. So the common data architecture includes 3 data models. So I mentioned this earlier in our products. It includes the information model, which is the highest level of the common data architecture. It represents those key real-world concepts that are important to a person. And those concepts are then further defined into subject areas within the model. We take that information model and those concepts and we blow it up into what we call a conceptual data model. So we start to layer in more concepts behind the scenes that are important to our person's health, but then we start to also include more relationships within and across those concepts and those subject areas. And then we blow out the conceptual data model into a logical data model. And this is when we start to layer in more of the data elements, those attributes, some of those business rules to help with the flexibility and implementation of that logical data model into more of a physical implementation, whether that be a data exchange standard or an actual physical implementation within a system itself. So this is a high level view of what the information model looks like. And I'm going to show you the actual information model in the next slide. But what I wanted to do is orient you to the concepts and what we're doing in the information model here. So what's really key is that we need consistent data to flow across all of these layers and within those layers and across those layers to really ensure better health outcomes for a person. So starting with the outer layer, that health system data layer, which is that yellow layer, this is the layer where we start to learn about the different types of health services and products, health human resources available within different communities or municipalities, whether they are publicly or privately funded. It could also include a consortium of researchers that are creating a health assessment to help improve a person's health, or a needs assessment that might be happening within a community. When we move into that jurisdiction health data layer, this is where you start to learn about those products and services or health human resources or resource utilization or even jurisdictional wait times that are publicly funded. And then when we move into that care organization data layer, which is that red layer, this is where we learn more information about the care organizations available for providing care. What are those health human resources available at that organization? What are the products and services available within an organization? What are the wait times for those products and services, whether they are publicly or privately funded? And so you're probably noticing a pattern in how I'm speaking to each of these layers. And that's important because it is a data model and the data models need to have patterns in them. The next layer is the person health data layer. So this is really that layer about you as a person. And we think this is important because this is a person-centric data model and it puts the person in the middle of the health system. It is you as a person that is receiving medication. It is you as a person that's receiving an immunization. And as you navigate the healthcare system and enter, let's say, into a hospital, this is where within that care organization data layer that you might become a patient within a hospital, you might become a resident within a long-term care facility, or you're a client within primary health care or home care. And so this is also a reason why we have a business glossary to help support the implementation of the Pan-Canadian Health Data Content Framework. But no matter how you slice and dice these layers and the concepts within all of these layers, consistent data and health information needs to be collected and needs to be shared across all those layers to help ensure better health outcomes, better decisions, and healthier Canadians. So this is the view of the information model. And I'm not going to walk you through every single detail here, but what I will do is orient you to what you're looking at on the screen. And, I'm sorry if you're squinting, I really am. Within the person health data layer, which is that teal one, so that's the top one. And then we have the care organization data layer, which is in red. And then we have the jurisdiction health data layer, which is in purple. And then we have the health system data layer, which is in yellow. So if you think about the different, again, blocks of information that Shannon talked about, this is how we're demonstrating that the different concepts within the healthcare system and the data that's collected needs to flow across all of those layers in order to provide quality information for a person. So within each of these layers, starting at the teal section, you'll notice that there's some hollowed boxes, like a lighter color of teal. This is what we call a subject area. So that right now across our data model, we've identified 24 subject areas. And then within each of those subject areas, you'll notice a darker teal box. So those are not just a darker teal box, but you'll notice across all the subject areas that there are darker boxes. Those shaded boxes are what we call concepts. And then you'll notice concepts all across the different layers of this model. And then off of those darker shaded boxes, you see lines coming off of those boxes to other concepts across the subject areas and across the layers of the information model. And those are the relationships between each of those concepts. And as I mentioned before, consistent information needs to be collected and shared across all of these layers to improve a person's health. So then we blow up those concepts into a conceptual data model. So this is what you're looking at on the screen right now. This is, again, an example using the concept of immunization. And you'll notice the relationships coming across it to other boxes here on the screen. So these other boxes represent other concepts. And when you're looking at the tan colored boxes, this is an example of a concept that's further elaborated within another diagram of the information model or conceptual data model. And similarly, there's this gray box that you see over to the right called adverse event. This is an example of a concept that we will further elaborate on in a future release. And then we blow up the conceptual data model into a logical data model. And so this is what you're looking at here. So here's where we start to layer in those data elements and the attributes and some of the business rules that are part of the data model and the data itself. And this is the exact same view that you saw earlier. It's just a little bit more detailed at this point. So now I'm going to get into the consultation approach. And I think Shannon did a good job touching on the approach that we're using to consult with our different stakeholders and experts. To develop the products of the framework, we are using a multi-pronged approach to help co-design all of these products. We have our informal advisors. So we like to call those like our friendlies. They may include some clinicians that we're discussing the approach with or some of the concepts with. In some other situations, we might be talking to our partners. This would include Canada Health Infoway, but it would also include Stats Canada, for example. And then we have some more targeted groups. So a targeted group may include a specific area or concept that we're looking to further define the data in. It could include experts within maternal health. In some cases, it might be a jurisdiction offering us a deep dive into their actual logical data model that they're using for a specific topic. Like in some cases, it might even include even the way organizations are modeled within a jurisdiction. With our number 3, which is the co-contributor working groups, and some of them have joined us today. So thank you again for your help, and happy that you are here supporting us today. Our co-contributor groups, there are 3 sets of them, and these groups are helping us by rolling up their sleeves and helping us really refine and build out the content of the products of the framework. And I'll talk about this in a few seconds. And then we have the open and public review. So I've mentioned that once we've produced all these draft products, we do put them up for open review to get more consultation and expertise on the content of the framework so that we can further refine and expand on it. So the 3 co-contributor working groups that we have include one for data standards, one to help refine the value sets and terminologies, and then we have our expert data architects. It does include a variety of stakeholders. So we do include patient partners in our consultations. We have service providers. This includes clinicians such as some physicians and then some nurses. We have policymakers, we have researchers, we have some terminology experts, and then we have data architects. So we do have a variety of these experts all contributing to the data standards work itself. And then of course, for the terminology and value set work, we have terminology experts that are getting together every 2 weeks to help define some of the terminology. And then for the expert data architecture, we have data architects from across some of the provinces and territories within Canada. We have some from our digital health organizations, and we also have representation from vendors helping us build out the artifacts of the architecture artifacts. So what do we do with all of this feedback that we receive? So I've mentioned that we're consulting with our friendlies, we're building out the products, we have our co-contributors helping in the co-design, and then we're bringing in stakeholders with diverse backgrounds to come and provide feedback through open review. So we take all of that feedback and we iterate on it. And we work on it to get within a flow with the data elements, data models, and value sets. Our product delivery teams get together, they assess the feedback, and then they evolve the content of the data content standard, ensuring that we're identifying gaps and ensuring that we don't have duplications, and that the definitions and that we're using for the data elements and value sets are clear. So I think I've made it clear that collaboration is key, and we definitely do need to be collaborating with a variety of stakeholders that have different expertise and experiences within the healthcare system to help advance interoperability and the adoption of the Pan-Canadian Health Data Content Framework. So, we often talk about how it takes a village, but I would say in the case of the work that we're doing and we're trying to achieve in Canada, it actually takes a country. So for our next steps, and I alluded to this earlier, we are aiming to release draft version 2 in September 2025. And this is going to be followed with a 60-day open review process again. So we're going to be sending out communications. We will be on social media. We will be advertising that this is out for open review. So if you haven't participated yet, please participate. We do want to hear from you. We are going to continue the co-development process that we have with our free co-contributor working groups. This is invaluable. I cannot express how much value we get out of this. We are not necessarily all the experts within a product delivery team, but if you take everyone that's involved in this work and how they're rolling up their sleeves and sharing their expertise with us, we are building solid products to help with the adoption and advancement of interoperability and data standards within our healthcare system. We are working towards aligning with the US CDI and continuously working closely with our colleagues at Canada Health Infoway to align to the CA Core Plus. And we will continue to have collaboration with our international standards development community. And if you want to get involved, participate in the open review, share the communications, champion the work. If you want to stay up to date, join our Connected Care distribution lists at connectedcare@cihi.ca. And we also have a community on InfoCentral called the Pan-Canadian Health Data Content Framework Community. We do post our products there for open review as well. And we do invite the community in to join us for updates. And this is the end of my presentation.